The Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians is pleased to present this audio-video replay. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive notifications of future content.
So I don't know how you people who were here to talk to us tonight want to do this, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. But thank you for agreeing to come and talk to us tonight so that those of us who may not have ever been on a cruise can find out a little more about how you managed and the things that you found accessible, not accessible, fun, not fun. We just want to hear about whatever it is you have to share, and we'll share it with those who want to hear about it. But it's, you know, just a reminder that Thursday night chats are never meant to be recorded when there's other sensitive topics being discussed. But this is going to be fun. So here you go. It's all yours.
Who would like to start?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had a plan, Louise.
Okay, so let
Originally,
me
you
do
had
this.
a plan.
Okay, why don't we take one of the guide dog users, then Diana, then the other guide dog user. So who would like to start, Marilyn or Richard?
I don't know. Marilyn's got the most recent cruising experience with the guide dog, probably
Okay, so we'll go,
between the two of
Marilyn,
us.
you get the privilege to start.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was counting back, thinking ahead to this presentation. I've been on 5 cruises. The first was in 2001 when Ken took me on a surprise turnaround cruise from Los Angeles to Vancouver, and that was with Princess. And then for my retirement, we went on a Alaska cruise, a 7-day Alaska cruise with Princess, and it had a land tour after that, which was really kind of fun. And then the next one that we did was with Doug and Diana, and it was in 2022, I want to say, and it was a Viking River cruise. And then last year, we did a Liberty cruise that was called a fan cruise with a folk singer named John McCutcheon, which was really fun. And then Peg and Diana and I and Lynn and and Betty and Dawn, we just came back in April from a Vancouver to Hawaii cruise. So there were 3 cruise lines involved. And I would say that from my experience, the people were very nice. The food was really good. I don't know how well I can speak to accessibility because Ken was with me all the time, and it doesn't mean that I didn't do things by myself, but I had the choice of what I could do by myself, and most of it we did together just because it was fun to do. And on my last cruise with my dog, we did a lot of guide work on the cruise, with Ken giving us directions from behind because I didn't really know my way around. But the part that we thought was kind of fun was it seems really easy for sighted people to get lost on a cruise because all the hulls look the same, and as long as the ship is going in the same direction, they do okay. But when the ship turns around, they're screwed. What can I say? And because everything's opposite. But the funny part was my dog knew more about which way to go than Ken did, and I was a little bit better than Ken, but Lima was the champion at knowing. And if we turned one direction and Ken said no, we should go the other direction, it usually turned out that we had to go the way that Lima thought we should go in the first place, and that was really neat. I liked that when I cruised with my dog, there was a life jacket for my dog every time. She was well accommodated. There were good relieving spaces for her in all the cruises. People were really good about not touching my dog. Although I have to tell you, on the Hawaii cruise, everywhere we went, I heard, "Aren't you gorgeous? Aren't you beautiful? Oh, look at her. She's so smart." As we came out of dinner this one night, and I heard it again, "Aren't you gorgeous?" And I turned around to the lady who said it, and I said, "Oh, aren't I, though?" And she just lost it. I said, I'm sorry, I had to say it just once. Well, we laughed and laughed and laughed because they didn't mean me. They meant my dog, and everybody knew it, but it was a lot of fun. And the cabin people were great. On the Holland America cruise, there was some pretty good Braille that I would say the Braille was well written, but I never did get information about where Braille might be located or what it might be on. I'm trying to remember whether the elevators talked, and I can't.
They did.
Yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. They talked. And on the other cruises I was on, I think that everyone did their best to do what they thought a blind person might need. And with the Princess cruises, I found that there were more people that maybe weren't as familiar with English that were crew members, but they really tried hard, and it was fun, and we met a lot of nice people wherever we went, and I really enjoyed it. And I don't really know what else to say. I've loved cruising, and I hope I get to do it again.
Marilyn, tell them about a little, because other people could run into it, and it worked out fine, but about the issues with all the forms because of Lima going
yes,
to
thank
Hawaii.
you, Diana. Thank you. So this was partly about going to Hawaii, but the main problem that we ran into is at the Holland America accessibility desk. It seemed that the person, now I'm saying it seemed that because I have no proof, but it seemed as though the person that was requesting I send these forms either didn't do anything with them or didn't tell me what they had done with them. And I kept getting requests to have forms sent again. And we'd sent them and we sent them. And when it came time to go on the ship, in case I got any backlash, I copied the forms that we'd sent to them a year ago, so I had proof. There were no problems, but finally at the end, I got a different person at the accessibility desk, and they sort of said, oh my goodness, and started sending things like crazy. So I really don't know where the breakdown occurred, but I know that in future, I would want to ensure that the forms I sent into the company were sent on to the ship or wherever they needed to go to, and I would need to say, please let me know when this has happened because of a breakdown in communication I had on a previous cruise. And it did work out, but it sure was frustrating.
Talk about your harness, walking with the harness and the rolling ship.
Yes, I was thinking about that. Yeah. We had some really rough days. And what I found was when it got really rough, I made the decision not to do guide work with Lima because holding the harness, above her back without touching her body, and everybody that's a guide dog user would understand that. I didn't know when the harness moves in a direction, say to the left or to the right, like just the little tiny motions that we all learn to depend on. I found I wasn't sure which was the motion of the ship in really rough seas or whether it was my dog giving me a directional cue. So what I decided was that I would wait till it was calmer to do guide work, and when it wasn't calm where I could trust that the harness motions were coming from Lima, I just healed her with Ken in harness, and it worked out fine. Thank you, Diana.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
It's Tammy. I just wanted to know a couple things about guide dogs. One is what were the relieving areas like? And I'll just and your cabin, was it any bigger? Was it the same sort of, like how did that work out? And when going on excursions, how did that all work out? So those
Okay. So first of all, about the relieving area, in all of the cruises, they've been quite good. They've been an adventure. The only one that I didn't like so well was one of them, the Princess Cruise to Alaska, and we had to go through the cruise quarters, and it was inside, and they had an area for her, and that was all right. But since then, I've requested an area outside on the deck, which is more open air and more natural for the dog. And I'm going to tell you something that we've done, and this was Ken's idea, and it started back in 2019 when we had Misty, and we took her on the Alaska cruise, and Ken got a piece of paper towel and had her pee on it, and then we let it sit and dry. And when we went to the area for her to relieve, he put the towel underneath the sort of like the artificial turf or whatever it was they had, and Misty got her own scent, and she just went right away. So we did that with Lima, and she understood it right away. And this time she had no problem, but she's also had some practice relieving in the doggy inside areas in airports. So that has helped. Now, I will say we chose not to take our dog on the European cruise because she was getting old, and we thought there were just too many forms. Now, considering what we had to fill out for Hawaii, it was quite interesting because the as well as the ship forms, we had to get her a rabies titer test and various other things. And with all that done and all the results approved, a veterinarian had to come on board from the state quarantine office and assess that she was healthy and get a copy of her signed health certificate. So it was pretty interesting. The cabin, when we went on to Princess in 2001, our first one, it was a bigger cabin, which was really nice, but we didn't really need it. And the other cabins have all been fine. And as for the excursions, we've had no access problems in any of the countries that we've been in and done excursions with our dogs.
Good.
Okay, it's Louise. I have a question because
Yes,
this is
Louise.
one that, because you went to Hawaii and knowing that you have to go through all the extra testing with a tighter testing.
Yeah.
If you were to leave your dog on the ship, did you still have to do it because you were going into port?
You would never.
No, I don't think so. The titer test was her to be allowed to go in off the ship into the state of Hawaii. Now I know because I got assurances from Holland America that if the veterinarian hadn't approved her going off the ship, that they would have looked after her for me, but I really didn't want to do that. And I'm glad I didn't have to find out what would be involved.
I just asking so people would know that answer, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, that's the question because when you came to first dock, the first port in Hawaii, was that the port where they were? Did you have to pay extra for them to come to that port? Nope.
No, it was all prearranged, and I knew before we left that the doctor to come onto our ship had been arranged, and I was nervous. I mean, this isn't anything to do with our topic really, but because of the deteriorating political situation, you know, and border things, I was a little bit anxious. And we're waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden, this big booming voice and a big smile. She comes striding across like she owns the world. Lima, there you are. Of course, Lima, my old suck, she crawled right in her lap.
Oh, it's an honest question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yep.
Is anybody else got any more questions for Marilyn, or should we go on to Diana?
Well,
thanks,
we'll think of
everyone.
something later.
Yeah, we might think of something later.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll still be here.
Okay, so we'll go to Diana next.
Okay. Yeah, full disclosure, I have always cruised with my husband or my family. But like Marilyn, we're not glued at the hip. And there was one day that Doug and Ken went on a hike up to a volcano, and Marilyn and I decided that we didn't really want to go, and we probably figured they needed a break from us anyway. So they went off, and we stationed ourselves in what is called the Dutch Cafe, which had wonderful pastries and chocolate, and it was quite sinful. They also had good alcohol, so we were fine. And we did a little walk so that I could figure out how to get to the where the counter to order things, and or to the washrooms. So we figured we were good. And Peg and Lynn came and visited.
Yeah.
And neither one of us felt that we had to sit there all afternoon, but it was a nice day and we could just eat and drink and chat. And so we ended up staying there, but we didn't feel like we had to. It was funny because when I went to get drinks the one time, I went up to the counter and I got the drinks, and the waiter, and I think normally the people pick your drinks up at the counter and carry them back. And he kind of said, "Oh no, you just go back to the table and I'll bring them," which was probably a good thing because I had a cane in one hand and I was I hadn't figured out I'd go back and forth or whatever. But Marilyn was the beacon, so I could find the table again. And but I was able to do that. The ship I thought was quite good. I didn't always look for Braille. As Marilyn said, you had to know where to look, but that's not a problem of the ship. That's a problem that we don't see Braille signs, and there's no exact I mean, there's ideal locations, but they're not always where you think they might be. But all of the venues had signs, Braille signs outside their door. All the rooms had Braille room numbers, and the stairs, there was usually like a half flight and then a turn and another half flight. And every time that the stairs were the half flight stairs, the railings went all the way around, so that there was no break. If you stayed on the right side of the I don't mean the right hand necessarily, the correct side of the stairs where they were turning is what I mean. You could follow the rail around, and then for the next floor there would be a small break, but you could still follow it, but you knew then you were at a floor, and then you could go down the next or up the next set of stairs. So in that sense, you could kind of keep track of where you were and the floors you were on. The elevators, if you were outside a venue, and some of them were really loud, it was hard to hear when the elevators came, because it was so loud. And so, but I mean, yeah, but that wasn't the fact that they weren't accessible, because they were. They all had Braille on the buttons and large print. And I was asking Doug about some of the things for low vision, and the cafe I was talking about, whenever we went there, he took his camera, his phone, and went up, because the menu was behind the counter. And so he took pictures of the menu and then brought them back, and then he could blow them up if he wanted to be able to see them. Oh, and then actually then he'd read them to us. And in terms of menus, there's on the Holland America cruise we were just on, they had what's called the Navigator app, and it was very accessible. It had all of our menus. I had been on another Holland America cruise to, well, we've been on a couple to the Grand Canal, was it? Yes. And we went on a Caribbean cruise with my mother and my aunt. And that cruise, I had Braille menus for me. My aunt had low vision, so she had large print menus. And I had bingo cards. I could get Braille bingo cards. This Holland America cruise didn't have the Braille or the large print menus, although there was some discussion that if you'd asked them 3 months ahead, you might be able to get the menus, but then I'd wonder if they were out of date anyway. The point was the Navigator app menus were accessible on your phone, so we could read the menus for all the meals. And the itineraries for all the days were on also on the Navigator app, so you could get information that way. And what I mean about itineraries is that there's always activities on the ship all day long. You can go to cooking things. And I didn't, so I don't know how accessible they were. We went wine tasting. That was fun. Marilyn and Doug and I did that. That was great one day. And there were lectures about all the places that we were going. There was a guy that would give a lecture every day if you wanted to go to the theater, and so you could go and see that. And there was Aquafit. There was there was a nice gym. I didn't choose to go there. I got my exercise walking up and down the stairs. I thought that was my big event. We stayed on the 7th floor, and the dining room was on the...
It's on the 3rd, I think.
Third. It was on third, actually.
Yeah.
Second and third.
Yeah, dinner was on the 3rd, and I think the main dining room for breakfast and stuff was the 2nd, yeah.
Was on the 2nd. And then on the top, I think, the 9th and 10th deck, the Lido deck, it had also areas where you could get pizza, and there was a coffee bar. What else was there? There was ice cream bar.
Yeah, ice cream and milkshakes.
Yeah, and then they had and there was a buffet too that you could get. And there's a swimming pool, so you can go swimming. You didn't have to leap over the side and jump into the ocean for a swim. And we tried that one day. It was really weird because the pool was like the ocean. It had waves because if the boat moved. And it's interesting, Marilyn was saying, it wasn't so rough. None of us, at least I didn't feel seasick. It wasn't that rough. But you had to be kind of careful when you walked, and you all kind of looked like drunken sailors. Maybe we were. Yeah. And that was because, and I hadn't thought of this before, it was the first cruise I've been on where you crossed a lot of open ocean, because the cruise was 5 days to get to Hawaii, 5.5-ish, I think. And then we saw ports that we went to at each of the islands, and then the same number of days home. So there was lots of sea days, and I liked those. Oh yeah, and there's lots of shows at night. There's trivia. There's music shows. There's a BB King's Blues, and this was the Holland America, but all the cruises have the same type of things. I didn't like the BB King's because it was so loud. That it was too loud, I thought. But I mean, some people liked it. It was always crowded and always busy, so you go somewhere else. Right across from it, my favorite was the piano bar. They had 2 piano players, and they weren't dueling. They actually played together. They were really good. And so you could go and see those things. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. Oh, the washrooms, you could go, there was quite a few that were gender neutral. So you could go on your own into them, or you could, and they were accessible. So you could use those instead of having to go into the slightly bigger ones. Although even the big ones weren't used. But some of them had quite interesting doors. I don't know how Peg didn't get squished sometimes because she was in a walker or a wheelchair during that cruise that we went on then. But what else can I tell you? The excursion, I was trying to think, because some of you might consider this, whether I would go on a cruise on my own. And it wouldn't be the accessibility that stopped me. It's because it's kind of nice to do it, to be with other people.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's why I would, and I don't know how it works, because I think if you go on your own, most of the cruises are double occupancy.
You pay
So,
1.5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you pay more if you're going as a single person, and maybe different cruise lines have different ways that they figure that out. But yeah, I think it's 1.5 times. So now the other thing that I found on this cruise, and it was really nice because none of us told the dining staff to do this, but they would come around when they brought your dinner and they'd say, okay, I'm setting your dinner down. They didn't always use the clock system, but they'd say, here's your wine. Or they would, and when I'd say touch you, because we've had so many discussions lately about when you'd grab a blind person, they'd touch us ever so lightly on the arm or the shoulder, so we would know that they were addressing us. And sometimes they used our names, but it just depended. But I found that really nice. They did it very respectfully, and we didn't have to educate them, which it's not that I mind doing that, but it was nice that they figured out. Now, to give them credit, they had a table with 4, 5 blind people, partially sighted people, so they had to figure it out pretty quick. But they did, and at least I thought they did. That was my impression.
And Diana, if I can add to that too,
yes.
I think they might have talked about it with other crew members, because I found they started doing that, in the other bars, in the other restaurants.
I did too.
And they would like talk to us, hi Marilyn, hi Diana, hi Peg, hi Lynn, hi Betty. They were really, really great.
Yeah.
They would use our names when they could, or they would get our attention when they couldn't, and they'd come by and they wouldn't just look at us. They'd ask us if we wanted another drink or whatever wherever we were, right?
And to give them credit, they did look at us at first and found out it didn't work, because I know I messed it up a couple of times. As soon as they started either touching me or using my name, they saw that, they got it right.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a hand go up.
Okay.
Marie, you had your hand go up and down a couple times. Did you have a question? Marie?
Oh, is she muted?
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we're up to 14. I haven't looked. Well, I'm trying to think if there's other things.
Okay, Nancy's raised her hand.
Okay, Nancy. Okay.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I went on a cruise in Great America, and we went to Alaska last year. When I booked my room, I asked for a handicap room, and it wasn't a handicap room, and we were on the main floor. The question was, I was going to ask you, did you do all your itineraries before you left, with all the going out to outside to go for a tour?
We did most of our, well, if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to get a lot of the ones you wanted. So we booked a lot of all the excursions that we were choosing to go. Like, you have a choice. The excursions are extra. So you pay beyond what you pay for the ship to go on them. Yeah. But you don't have to go on the excursions if you choose to just get off the ship and wander around the port, or you have a plan. Like one day we decided we'd go to Pearl Harbor, and we decided we didn't want to take their package tour. So we just took a taxi and went to Pearl Harbor. So you can do stuff like that. But it's better if you, any excursions that you want to go that are, I'll call them organized excursions, you probably want to book them ahead. And you can book them all online. I know Betty was doing hers. Sometimes we helped each other to book them. We didn't do everything together. Sometimes 2 of us or 3 of us would do things. Sometimes would be so different. Like, we made a conscious choice to, we had dinner together every night. But the rest of the time, sometimes we do things. We had a chat group that, because we purchased the Wi-Fi package, and I would suggest that people do that. Well, it was more than the Wi-Fi. It was called the Have It All package, and included drinks and actually, when you think about it, it looks like it's really expensive, but on a lot of the ships, you pay for your water, you pay for your coffee, you pay for your tea, you pay for everything, not your meals that you're eating, but you pay for all the other stuff. And I'm not so sure that it isn't almost as cheap just to buy those packages and then it's paid for. But it's definitely a choice. You don't have to do that. But
because you were there for 17 days. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of drinks.
That's a lot of drinks. Yep. And so I would do it again. I would buy that package again.
Yeah. Well, the one I did in, the one I did
Nancy?
The one I did on my trip was I bought a 6-pack, and if you only drink 1 or 2, they keep it and hold it for you. So it's 6-pack was $25 or $30, and then I could have that. You know, I'm not a drinker, but like I said, I can't drink 6 beers, so I can take 1 a day. But like I said, when it comes to food-wise, you can take it to the restaurant. They take it to the bar for you. I mean, it was great. But the sad thing is, when it's a buffet and you don't know what's in. I was with a blind person, and 2 blind person seemed like we were eating the same food all the time because that's where we only knew how to get to. But it was sad for the dessert. I just want to sit in front of the dessert and eat everything.
I choose not necessarily to. The buffets are good. They're delicious. I generally choose not to go to them just because I enjoy having a sit-down dinner, and it doesn't cost you anymore. You can have anything on the menu when there's like 6 or 7 things that change every day on the menu that isn't the buffet. Well, there's more than that, I think.
You can pay to go to some of the other restaurants if you want a real special meal, but to eat at the same place all the time,
I didn't go to the buffet much on my cruises because I figured, I'm paying, the service in restaurants is free as well, and I just thought, I'm on vacation. It's nice just to be served and have a wonderful meal in the restaurant, like breakfast, for example. So anyway.
Okay, let's go to Richard, since Richard's been very patient.
He has.
Okay.
So yeah, I was going to say about the buffet too. Like we also would tend to use the dining room and other sit down venues as well too, because it's easier. But we've on longer cruises have done the buffet just because for a change, and it's a bit different. So I've been on 5 cruises now as well too, 4 with a dog, and the last one we did was a short repositioning cruise from Vancouver to San Diego last October, actually on the same ship that you all of you were on, that went to Hawaii on the Connex Dam. It had just done its fall Vancouver to Hawaii, Vancouver run, the October version of your trip, and then it was doing its repositioning to do the Mexican Riviera for the winter from here. So we did the cruise from Vancouver to San Diego on that particular one. But previously, our 4 cruises had been on Norwegian. So first time I went on a cruise was in 2014. I had originally booked it as part of a group trip. It was ACB, one of the Blind LGBT Pride International had organized a cruise. It was in 2014, and originally I had actually was planning on staying with someone in that on the cruise. They canceled the cruise, and then I was going to go on my own, and then sort of flippantly asked Bill if he'd be interested in going on a cruise, and he said yes, and of course the rest is history. So and
Yeah.
so we went. That was our first cruise. That was Eastern Caribbean, and I took my dog. So that involved preparing paperwork for a number of countries as well too as well. So we had to prepare. I had to prepare paperwork for not only for Norwegian itself, but for because we had a port of call in Saint Martin, we had a port of call in Saint Thomas, and then we had a port of call in the Bahamas. The Bahamas, I didn't get off the ship with my dog because they charged a fee to board to get to go to shore with a dog, even though it was a service guide dog.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
stayed on the ship with my dog in the Bahamas on that particular cruise, and there was definitely a lot of paperwork involved as well too. And then Norwegian didn't have an option for the relieving area, so they set up an area because there was 2 or 3 guide dogs on that first cruise. So they said I was on a different deck because when I did my booking, they were having a sale on balcony cabins. That was basically for the same rate as inside cabins. So I booked the balcony cabin, but there was no cabins left on the deck that the other group members are on. So I was on a different deck. So that they actually had set up 2 different relieving areas, one for my dog and another one for the other dogs, but they were in crew quarters. So it took a bit of coaxing to get I had Bradshaw still then, he was older already, to use basically the equivalent to a litter box for dogs, but he did do it, but it didn't the thankfully the relieving inside didn't transfer to wanting to relieve inside in other places than when we got home as well too. So
Good.
because it was a litter box like that, like it was clear, like he'd figured it out that it was something he had to do, and he had actually seen similar litter boxes at a couple of the conferences in the States as well too, because they'd use them there as well too, even in their outside relieving area. So that was our first cruise. Our second cruise, we did the Panama Canal. So that was similar length to your Hawaii cruise. It was 3 weeks on board. 4 of our cruises have been all with Norwegian. So the only time we cruised with Holland America or another cruise line was when we went on our last cruise. But the same thing. It was staff are really great. They had actually on the second cruise, since it was such a long cruise, partway through the cruise, one of the staff members had told us that they were all sent sort of a notification in their staff newsletter that there was going to be a dog on board for the for the entire repositioning from Vancouver to Miami, and so they basically had kind of been told like this is what you're not supposed to do and da 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 da. But it was such a long cruise, and the staff, a lot of the people, we found a lot of the staff members miss their own dogs at home, so they would always be so happy to see a dog. And usually most of the time on that cruise in the morning when we go for breakfast, the person to be greeted was Bounty. Like it would be, hi Bounty, oh, and it's like, oh, hi Richard and Bill. or it was usually, hi Bounty, hi Mr. Bill, hi Mr. Richard.
Yeah.
So that was about it. But the same thing, the cabin steward was excellent. Like the cabin steward had actually funny, after the first day or two, he had started when he'd come and make up the cabin, he'd fold the dog's bed and put it under there was a little coffee table by the couch, and put his toys out. And then at night when they did the cabin turn down, he put the dog's bed back out and put the toys away.
Oh my goodness.
Nice.
Wow.
Why don't you have that at home?
Yeah.
Yeah, better treatment there.
Yeah, and but the same thing, like a lot of we had, because our cruises involved Mexico and the Caribbean, so we did have some other issues with paperwork. We did have one excursion, and I had a similar issue as Maryland. Like we had actually our first cruise, Norwegian hadn't really done like hadn't really informed us what was going to happen in the various countries. So I wrote a letter to them on what would work better. So again, I talked to their accessibility office, but we found out only after we got to Mexico that they hadn't notified the tour operators. So we had the first tour was that we did in Cabo San Lucas, just on a repositioning cruise. They didn't want the dog, and so we had, and so we had the onboard staff at Norwegians had checked with the office in Miami, and they hadn't notified any of the tour operators, so they agreed to let us leave the dog on the ship as well too. And I mentioned it to the cabin steward, so he just said he'd look in on him, but he wouldn't disturb him. So he made up our cabin early in the morning while we were at breakfast, and then we could then basically we just put the do not disturb flag out on the door, and Bounty was good inside. We were only gone for half a day, so it wasn't like it was in a really long period of time. If it was another dog that had separation anxiety, I don't think I would have done that. I would have stayed on board with my dog. But and then after that we were good. But but yeah, that's really about it. We did have one, like Marilyn was saying, I did work my dog on the ship. Like usually if I was with Bill, we do sighted guide. But on one of our cruises, Bill had to be put into quarantine because he had a stomach bug, but thankfully it wasn't Norwalk. And I was basically alone that day. I actually got off the ship with my dog in Huatulco, Mexico, and went to shore and walked around the village, and then came back to the ship, and then spent the afternoon playing trivia and doing stuff, and while Bill was basically in the cabin. And so so I had the opportunity. So if I hadn't had the dog, I probably would have just been stuck on the ship as well too. So that was nice to have. And then then we did an Alaska cruise as well, and but we did a 7-day from Vancouver to Anchorage, and then flew back home. So it was we did, but we did all the excursions in Alaska with the dog, and as well too, the ones that because we did the excursions at the 3 ports of call on the way up, and as well we had a rough sea day on the very last day. I don't know if it was probably not as rough as your Hawaii stuff, but I trying to remember. I don't think Bill remember. I think I ended up not working Bounty on that day because it was just too difficult. Like when the ship was going up and down, to actually keep him steady and keep me steady as well too. But that was about it. And then our very last cruise was no dog. So it was I was basically attached to Bill all the time, and it was on the same exact ship as Marilyn Ken. We like the crow's nest bar up
Oh,
on the
yeah,
up on
that's
the
nice.
on deck. I think it was deck 12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
What was it
So
about that bar
but
you liked?
it's funny, Diana, you mentioned Copacabana, you thought it was too noisy. The place that we thought was too noisy was the place across from the piano bar, the Rolling Stone Lounge. It was okay as long as you were sitting in the piano bar.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty loud too.
Yeah.
And
I think BB King's and Rolling Stone are right next to each other.
They're fairly close.
They're
on
fairly
the same
close.
level.
They're down. They're all on the same level. It's down the hall. BB King's, Rolling Stone, and the Billboard Lounge were across from each other.
We're across from each other.
I mean,
Yeah.
you get off the elevator and the floor would be bouncing, so you move.
It was,
Is that one near the casino? Is that the one near the casino?
no, the casino was on a different floor.
Casino was
That
on the third
really
deck.
noisy
was it?
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
and smoky.
Oh,
Yeah.
Casino,
Yeah.
the smokiest place on the ship is the
Oh,
casino. I always think it's so
gross.
weird
Terrible.
that they let people smoke in the casinos on.
It's gross.
And that's the same on every cruise ship. They let people
No.
smoke in the casinos. And
Yeah,
That's
You think
funny
they have a
story.
designated
it
area
is.
for them,
Yeah,
even in the
there's
casino?
when we got on the ship, the very first day, the casino was closed. Nobody was in it. And we walked through it. Like it wasn't, you were allowed to go in it, but when you're in port, the casino can't be open.
yeah,
So I'm saying, oh, well, this isn't bad. It's not the other, it's not smoky. This is, it's really nice. Well, then I don't know whether it was that next day, probably. It doesn't matter. Peg's going through and she's thinking, oh my God, like, how could you say this isn't smoky? Because, of course, now we're out of port and everybody's in the casino and smoking. And yeah, I had to agree with her that, yes, it was.
Yeah.
Very
And they wouldn't
smoky.
believe me at first.
and then what I like, because we had been on the same ship, and what I found, because it was a smaller ship, like it was a fairly small casino, and so the smoking was a really confined area.
Oh, God.
Like
Yes.
the bigger
Terrible.
ships that we were on in the Caribbean, it wasn't quite as bad because the casino was, well, it was like, it was smoky, but the casino was bigger, but it didn't mean that there was more people smoking, because that particular ship also had a designated outdoor
ventilation,
a
too.
designated smoking area in another part of the ship too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one had one
Yeah.
in one pool decks at the back. Yeah.
did you
Yeah.
have to walk through the casino to get places?
Yeah.
To some
Yes.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You do.
Step out to, you kind of had no choice sometimes but to walk through the casino.
So
Yeah,
Tammy, it's Marilyn, if I can jump in with that question, what we found worked well is sometimes we would choose to go down to a different floor and walk through a different floor and bypass the casino just by
Then
one
back up.
floor. Like it was on floor 3,
Doing
so
that.
we would go down to floor 2 and walk to where we had to go and then go back up the floor,
Yeah.
rather than going through the casino and all the smoke and the noise and all that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, because we always usually walked on that ship, and most other ships too. We'd always walk the deck above or below the casino, like because like the bigger ships, like like we were on the Norwegian ship, so the Getaway and the Pearl was the two of the ships we were on had stuff on the other decks other than the casino as well too. So you could easily get from one you could easily get to other parts of the ship without walking through the casino, unless you had to go to something on that casino deck. And then on a long cruise, especially like Hawaii and the Panama Canal, like you have so many sea days. We ultimately did spent some time actually in the casino as well too, but not terrible amount of time, because it's you don't win lots of money on a cruise ship.
I spent about half an hour, and it ate my 20 and didn't give me anything back. And I said, "That's it, I'm done."
I did the same thing.
Oh, I would have been there longer, so sorry.
Well, no, if they give me a little teaser, I don't mind staying. But it didn't. It just ate it. And
It wasn't fun.
No.
So we just left. We figured at least if we spent our money in the bar, we got a nice drink. So that was a better bet.
There you go.
I have a question for any of you who want to answer. My daughter Whitney went on one of those big cruises with all the kids, and back in February, I think it was Caribbean as well, on the newest ship. Anyway, she is someone who suffers so much from motion sickness. So driving, she has to be the driver all the time. If she has to be a passenger because she's riding in a cab coming home after an evening or whatever, that just is not comfortable. So when she finally got on the ship, she thought it was all great. But when it started moving, she thought, oh, okay, I guess, I'll have to be living on gravel for the rest of this trip. So she still felt it, I guess, is what I'm asking. It's obviously not as bad as, moving in a car or a bus or whatever, but
it's a
on the
different
ship,
kind of
different
movement.
motion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, when the water's really smooth, you really can't feel
Yeah.
anything. Like you can, like
Yeah.
you can
Much.
kind of, you kind of tell you're moving, but it's the up and down and side to side.
Yeah.
That's the motion that really,
Yeah.
and like I don't get motion sickness, but I remember on our Alaska cruise, the last night, it was really, really rough. And I ended up resorting to taking the gravel more so just to see, because it was moving so much, I couldn't get to sleep. And so I thought, well,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
gravel makes you drowsy. Maybe it'd be
Mhm.
enough. And it was enough. Like it.
And maybe
Yeah.
the vibration too, is there, like, I think sometimes she would say, you know, I can hear the noise.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think in your
Maybe where
mind,
her room was.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
Yeah.
too
And
sure.
you can definitely hear
It's
the
a
engines depending where you're on the
vibration.
ship.
Yeah.
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 Or
Right,
feel the
and
vibration.
I think it depends where you're situated. And what I think I learned with just a tiny little bit of experience is that if your room is more midships rather than near the stern or near the bow,
Yep.
it's probably not quite as pitchy and rolly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. That would make sense. If you're more in the middle, you're not
Exactly. Yeah.
feeling it as
So
much. Yeah.
that might work better for her if there's a next time.
Next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Because
coolest.
we were on a cruise where we're right at the bow, and that's
That.
And
coincident was also the roughest cruise we've been on as
Yeah.
well.
that's
Too.
where
You tell
we
the
were.
difference. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
quite enjoyed it. For me, it was part of the experience. And you know, I do want to say one thing that I never thought about until we got talking about this part. But walking along the deck to take Lima out to relieve, and Ken always went with us, but it was a really interesting exercise. I decided to use it as a chance to practice balance, and I think it was good. It was good for me to do that, and I didn't feel confident in taking her actually to do her pee, because she's the kind of dog that launches off like a rocket when she's done. Like, gee, that felt good. Let's run. And
Yep.
I said, I don't think I can do that. So Ken would take her to do that part, and then he gave me a pole to stand by. And for the first few days, I was holding on to it because we were bouncing up and down. But as it went on, and especially on the way back, my little challenge that I set for myself was to step away from the pole, but to know where it was and only reach for it if I needed it. And I think that was really good for my balance.
So you worked through it a little bit.
I did, yeah. And I'm glad I did that.
Okay, I want to include Peg and Lynn to share a little bit if there's anything they want to add on cruising, and then I want to go to Tammy because I know Tammy's cruised. So let's take and add a little bit from from Peg and Lynn.
Down and grab my battery charger so someone else can go first.
Okay, Tammy, you want to go next?
Okay. Yeah, I've been on 3 cruises, one in 2007 to Alaska on the Celebrity Cruise Line. And the last 2 were Carnival Cruise Lines, going to Bahamas last year, and Mexico this year. I guess the 2007, I mean, there's really no comparison, I think, from the 2007 to now. In terms of, it's not the cruise lines per se, but there's a lot of changes like in technology and things since 2000.
Yeah.
So 2007, I mean, I had to rely on people to tell me what was happening each day. You turn the TV on to try to figure out what's going on, like they had the announcements on the television. But on the cruise line now, I mean, there's the Carnival Hub app, which was very accessible. You could know what was happening each day. You could plan your day. Like, I actually felt I had quite a bit of independence that way. I also could look at restaurant menus. The cruise line that I went on for Carnival, everything is included, like your food and your coffee and tea and juice in the morning, I think, for breakfast, things like that. So there was quite a bit included actually with your stuff there. I didn't travel with a dog, and I was traveling with a group of 8 people. So there were a combination of blind and sighted people. Like, I didn't have, a spouse or a partner with me, but I went with a group of people, and that was okay. I sort of think that I wonder if I should travel with my dog next time. I'm going to Hawaii next year on Carnival. I don't know about that. I kind of go back and forth on that, because again, I'm with a group of people. But I enjoyed it. I guess what I found on the Carnival Cruise Lines was the elevators were not very accessible. They were these new ones where you had to push buttons on the outside and it would light up. Like you had to punch in the floor number you wanted to go to. It was inaccessible. It was better to use the stairs.
The tall deck to knock on floors.
Pretty awful, actually. But I think the one we're going on for Hawaii, I think it's an older ship, so the elevators are probably a lot like what the one you have there, like the standard elevator. But some of the new Carnival ships, they're getting these elevators that are not visually impaired friendly at all.
No.
So if you're okay with stairs, it's great. But if you're not, you really
I'm surprised they can get away with that.
well, yeah, I don't know how they did
So that's
that.
because there's no regulations for elevators.
No.
That's why
Yeah.
you just have to have them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I found that to be a bit of a pain, and the cruise was huge, like 40 people, and but I really enjoyed myself. I did. There's always people around, like to give you directions if you need directions or to answer questions. I had a pretty good experience on the cruise ship. I can think that's kind of. Oh, I guess the only thing I want to say is that each time I went on these cruises with Carnival, I had to leave from the States because they don't come here anymore. They used to, but after COVID, they don't. So I had to travel to Los Angeles, and traveling the day before to Los Angeles, um, no one else except maybe one other person came to Los Angeles the day before. So, it's interesting traveling somewhere the day before by yourself. But I really don't want to go the day of. I don't want to take that gamble, but at the same time, traveling by myself to LA, was a bit interesting. But I just found a hotel that was close to the airport where I could get a free shuttle and I could get a shuttle back. So, it worked out well. But yeah, there's just a few factors there. It's a little different than traveling from Vancouver, which I would have preferred. But yeah, that's my experience. Looking forward to Hawaii next year. I think it'll be fun. It's 14 days, I think, 15 days.
Did you go by yourself, Tammy?
Well, I went by myself to Los Angeles, but I met people there. I met one person there who came a day before. I went with a group of people on the cruise ship, but I met most of them in Los Angeles at the airport the day of the cruise. Like we took the shuttle, the Carnival shuttle to the
To the cruise port.
It was different than like me traveling with a partner or a spouse and then meeting other people. Like I was actually traveling by myself and meeting other people, which was well, I thought, well, what if they don't
Different, yeah.
weather's bad? Well, I guess I'm still going to go on the cruise because I'm not going to just wait around the airport for people and miss my cruise, like my time. So
Yeah.
I guess that's the traveling by yourself, like and meeting people, is that if they don't show up because of a snowstorm in Toronto, then well, I guess I still got to go, right?
Yeah.
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 One of the things, if you're traveling out of an East Coast port, you have to go to the cruise departure point at least the day before, because it's because there's no way, if you're going to fly from here to say Fort Lauderdale or Miami or New York or something, you can't expect to arrive early enough to board the
No.
ship.
No.
And even
He was on
LA,
that ship
it's
by
cut
9
out. Even
a.m.
in LA, it's pretty it'd be pretty tight. Like I've heard of people doing it. I just can't imagine it, because you're really counting on a lot of things to go right to fly to LA to expect to get to the airport cruise terminal in time to board.
Oh, yeah.
And Richard, I think you make a really good point.
Yeah.
Because on our Holland America flight, we had times that they wanted us to arrive and board depending on what deck we were on. And that worked incredibly well. It was really efficient.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, because and it's like all the cruise lines kind of do that, and because Norwegian say, oh, Norwegian would say, oh, arrive at the port by this time, but a lot of people would try to arrive early, thinking that if they board the ship early enough, they
doesn't
can have a
happen.
leisurely lunch, and it doesn't really matter anymore.
No.
The funny thing that happened to us on our first cruise is we had actually booked our previous night's hotel through the cruise line, because some of the hotels, the shuttle would pick people up there at the hotel prior to the at the hotel and take you to the port. And this is in Miami. So in this case, there was a number of us from the group that were going on the same cruise. So there was about 15 of us at this one hotel that we got on this bus, and we're on our way to the cruise port, and all of a sudden we hear a noise and the bus is backing up. The bus had backed into a car,
Oh,
and we were stranded on this bus for almost 2 hours. And
Oh,
by the time we got to the port, they rushed us through the priority boarding line because it was already after 2 in the afternoon.
oh no.
Yeah.
And got us on the ship because because literally we were boarding an hour before departure. Like we were
Oh,
almost
geez.
they
Wow.
but then they were telling us on the ship that they would have held the ship for us because it was their cruise bus. Like it wasn't
Ah,
yeah.
They
Yeah.
were responsible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take the shuttles. I know in New York, we went to the Bahamas, we did take Ubers or whatever. And, but in Los Angeles, we did take the shuttle. And I would recommend taking the shuttles. They may be a bit more money than taking an Uber with 6 people or whatever. But, sometimes saving money is not the object here.
mhm.
It's being protected by, like the cruise line. Like if they screw up or something happens, they're going to hold the ship for you. So, but with the Los Angeles thing, yeah, the people that I was traveling with from Ontario, they all came the day of. They left, I think, Toronto at 8 o'clock in the morning, Toronto time, got to Los Angeles around 11, Los Angeles time. And I'm like, you guys are darn lucky there's a storm in Toronto, because there was a huge snowstorm coming back and they were stranded for like, 8-10 hours in Los Angeles. So you just don't know. But
I wouldn't want to take a chance like that.
no,
Me neither.
I've
No.
always gone down at
And
least a day before.
Tammy, I don't know if you remember that when we had that train disaster going to the Guide Dog Reunion back in 2015.
yeah, the boulder.
The
So
boat.
there was some at one point I was talking to some people in the bistro car that were taking doing Alaska, like a cruise out of Seattle, like an Alaska cruise, and they took the train assuming that the train would get them there in time for their port departure. They probably barely just made it to the cruise ship terminal because we were
Wow.
delayed for an hour. But by the time we got to Seattle, we were almost 2 hours late
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any more cruising questions before we turn off the recording?
One of the things
No,
I
I have
wanted.
Oh, I was just gonna,
some questions
Okay.
too.
And
Okay,
Yeah.
Peg
okay,
was
Rita,
going to
just hold
talk
on.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's right, Peg and Lynn.
Yeah.
okay,
But
go ahead,
actually, I have
Egelin.
some
Sorry, I
questions.
forgot about that.
oh, well, I think everybody said a lot of stuff that I would say, and we've done cruises on Holland America and Princess, and we did one on Cunard a few years ago. And I would say that the staff are wonderful. And this last cruise, I was really impressed with just how wonderful all the staff were. And I have to say, it's the new experience I had was being a cruiser in a wheelchair. So, it was quite different, and I was envious of people going up and down the stairs. But anyway, the staff were terrific, and we went into the dining room, and they helped me get into my seat because I usually sat in the chair that was at the table because I preferred that. So, and just everything like that, and if they would help us along the way, and get us out of the dining room, and yeah, it was really great. Lynn and I had to. Well, we didn't have to, but we sort of didn't have a choice as far as timing was for breakfast. We would have preferred the dining room. We did go there a few times, but because the dining room's only open till 9, didn't give us a lot of time to get there for breakfast. So we ended up going up to the buffet, and there again, the staff was very helpful. We just we found someone who could help us get our food, and they were terrific, just really, really wonderful. So that's, I think the biggest takeaway, I have as far as interaction with the people on the ship. And yeah, I think I was trying to count how many cruises I've done. I think about 14 or so. I've lost
Okay.
Oh,
track.
wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You guys did something unique. You guys did a Christmas cruise. Is there anything different
Oh,
about
we've
that?
actually done
Share about
2.
that. That would be unique to share about.
Yes, we've done 2 actually. The first one we did was in 2010, going into 2011. We did a Holland America cruise, Christmas cruise on a little ship called the Prince and Dam, and it was pretty good. And yeah, they had well, they had Christmas carols. It's funny, I can't remember all of it too much. It was way back in 2010 or 11, but they had a New Year's Eve party, and that was really good.
Yeah.
We did a princess one to Hawaii in 2018, 19. That one was really good, and actually, I thought the food was a bit better as far as the the sort of celebration food, right?
Like the holiday stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was really really good. And they had a choir that I think I went in for at
Yeah,
one
we
point.
participated in that.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
second time around we did. Not
Yeah,
the
that
first.
was yeah.
That'd be fun.
So that was really good. No, but it was kind of interesting being away for Christmas. I had mixed feelings about it, but I thought, oh well, it was kind of neat, and swimming in the pool during the time when you normally wouldn't swim outside and stuff like that. So yeah, it was great. And I did this cruise. I did miss swimming in the pool because I wasn't sure how I managed getting in and out, and I was in quite a bit of pain and stuff. So that was hard to miss that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Hopefully next one.
But
You'll be okay.
yeah. So, but no, it was really really good. Yeah. So.
One of the things before you turn off the recording, just in terms of being a blind person on a cruise, one of the most interesting experience was because we haven't talked much about this, the riverboat cruise we did.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we went from Budapest to Amsterdam. And the couple of cool things about that were you could go out on the deck, and because it's a river cruise, it's always very quiet, like it doesn't, no waves or anything. You could hear all the people on the shore. And the people, if you could see, you could look into people's houses as you went by, and because you're really close to the because it's a river, right? So
yeah.
and it went through the locks because and you could reach out your hand on the ship over the rail and touch the sides of the lock and feel the boat moving up and down as it went.
I want to do that at the Panama Canal, but somebody wouldn't let me.
I would
love to.
I
We
don't
did
know
that
if you
in our
could
room.
reach.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could reach at the Panama Canal.
You could almost reach because I stuck my hand out and then Bill goes, stop it, and because he said someone was watching me as well too, so that's why.
We weren't far down enough to do that. That would have been neat, but yeah.
Well, if you went down to deck, so what we found is when we were going through the locks, if you went down to we went down to the deck where the atrium was on the ship. So decks, like the deck, the first outside deck was deck 7 on this Norwegian. So if you were on that was the deck everyone would stand on, because you could actually see the locomotives pulling the ship through the locks and stuff. And as it was going down, the wall was coming up on and I reached out to go and then Bill stopped. He said, "There's a crew member watching you." So.
Yeah, we had a balcony room that time.
So did we.
And Doug went up.
So on a riverboat, I could see the balconies. Your balcony cabins would be
do that.
because we couldn't on the larger cruise ships. If you're on your balcony in a cabin, you can't do that because they are too high.
These ones were. That was cool. And when I did the Panama one, I could lay outside, and Doug went up to watch. But they were doing a broadcast listing of all the describing everything.
Yeah.
And so I just laid out on a lounge chair outside my door,
yeah.
and they brought me coffees and alcohol, and they were having special drinks because it was
Oh,
a
yes,
Panama
thank you.
Canal.
Yeah.
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 And so, and Doug went up because he wanted to watch, which made sense. But I
But
thought
you
I
could,
can
yeah,
go
but there was
up.
a broadcast that just went through
Yeah.
the ship wide, so you could
Yes.
stay in your cabin.
Yes.
And
we had the experience of listening to the broadcast. This was the Alaska cruise, the one in 2024 with the celebrity line, and they had from the bridge a description of going through where all the glaciers were.
Oh, at
It was
Glacier
so
Bay.
neat to
Yeah.
listen
Yeah.
to them all talking and where they were going to turn and
Yeah.
how they were going to navigate. It was just fascinating.
That was cool. Yeah.
And like I think it depends on the ship line, but like when we went to Alaska, when we did Glacier Bay, they talked about what they were doing and how they were maneuvering, but they actually had someone on from the U.S. Park Service as well too, and talking about the wildlife in the area as well too, which was
Oh,
really
neat.
it was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
All
real.
right.
sorry, I had a question.
Yeah.
This was those of you that took dogs along. What did you have for a dog bed? Richard, you said they
Well,
moved his bed. Did you just bring his own bed?
I just brought a blanket like from home, like a travel blanket that I used for my dog at the time. So
Okay.
I just brought that, and what we did at night was just laid it out on the floor beside our bed,
Right.
and then that's what he slept on. But then the cabin steward, like I said, a couple mornings in, like we had forgot to pick it up when we were leaving the cabin. So when the cabin
Right.
steward came in to make our bed, he folded it and then just started doing it every day for us,
Oh, right.
and so I know we knew you're not you usually do the gratuities, like prepay them or pay them at when you're leaving the ship, but we had some extra US cash, and so slipped them some I think 50 or 60 bucks
Yeah, we
extra.
did the same thing.
Yeah.
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 Right.
And we had a blanket just like that, and we did exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay.
An
So
embarrassing
when the
dog
ship was
story.
when
Oh,
the ship was
embarrassing
An
moved
dog
around,
stories.
embarrassing. I have an
I'll-
embarrassing dog story. So Marilyn's
Well,
heard
you
this
know
before,
we're
and I think
all
a few of you,
friends.
yeah, well, it's going on YouTube now though. So when we were doing our Panama Canal repositioning, I'd say we were about a week into the cruise. We had we were walking around one night after show, and we decided we were walking through the gift shop, and we stopped to look at stuff, even though really by that point most of the stuff you saw in the gift shop was always the same, but we stopped to
Yeah.
look at something that we were contemplating buying, and then all of a sudden we're kind of not really paying attention because, like I said, we had been to a show and we'd had a drink with dinner. And so, and all of a sudden, this woman, we could hear the clerk going, sir, excuse me, sir, your dog's got a ship in his mouth." So Bounty had
Oh
picked
no.
up one of those rubber stress
Yes,
toys. It looked like a
yes.
tugboat.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Oh gosh.
I've laughed every time I've heard that story, and I love
Yeah.
it.
So you bought a
Oh,
ship,
that's
right?
funny.
He bought
No,
a ship.
well, he did. Yeah, I took it away from him and noticed there was no teeth marks on it and put
Oh.
it on the shelf.
That is
Wow.
so funny.
Okay, is
It
there
was
any more questions?
Bounty was just relieving his stress.
Well, he was just relieving his stress, and was showing me that he wasn't just a lab, that that he was reminding me that he was crossed with the
He is a
retriever as
dog.
well.
All
Oh, I
right.
think it was so funny.
Do the dogs, are there many instances of the dogs getting motion sickness?
Well, my dog didn't get sick, and I was
No,
really glad she didn't. I certainly was
Yeah.
thinking about it.
my
Oh dear.
mine didn't, but and Bounty didn't like the the feeling of motion. So like the the first, like when this on the first cruise we took him on was our Panama Canal one, and so the first night he was acting a little nervous. I thought, oh dear, this is going to be the beginning of a long cruise if that's the case. And so the first night I'd put his bed by the window, and then so I got up and pulled it right beside our bed, and then he was fine for the rest of the cruise. So then, and I just had to remember that he was basically sleeping by my head on the floor. So when I got up in the middle of the night, I wouldn't step on him.
Yeah.
Not careful for him.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had
So
an
was
experience.
the bed when the ship was moving, was the bed the dog bed
You
moving
got
around a
rocked
bit
to
too?
sleep. You got
No.
rocked to
Yeah.
sleep. Well, you
No.
did. It's really nice.
I
I
guess.
Yeah.
like it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And
For the cruise that we took. Sorry, Rita, go ahead.
No, it was.
I was me. I was saying
okay.
it kind of reminded me of being on a train too.
Oh, yeah.
And how
It was really
how
nice.
it sways back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Well, with the cruise that we took, the first one, the Alaska one, that was my dog Garth, and I was okay. But when we got back, Ken was laughing because he said Garth is still walking like he's on a moving ship.
Oh.
And the last cruise, the big one, it didn't bother Lima for about 3 days. And anybody who's been to our house, we have sort of a large expanse of floor in our house with our living room and our kitchen. And every time I walked across it, I felt like the floor was bouncing up and down. I
Yeah.
ridiculous all in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? I know when you guys went on the cruise to Alaska from Vancouver, there were 3 ships going at the same time. It was so packed. We got there early, but I had my cane with me. Once I got on to cross the border, going out of the port, I couldn't figure out what boat I was going on. I remember they gave me a blue bag. I think my boat was K, but oh my God, what do you do? How do you tell what boat? Because everyone's leaving the same time, coming out at the same time, and they say, "Oh, remember this spot that you're in?" Well, that boat had left, and I thought I was on the wrong. I almost went on the wrong boat because
But
they don't.
I
We
didn't
don't.
see it. I didn't find it like that at
I
all.
didn't find that either.
No.
I've left our port 3
It's
times, and
terrible.
what I found is what we found is they like after you clear U.S. customs, there's people from all the cruise lines, and you end up following someone to your ship
Yeah.
to where you have to
Yeah.
yeah.
They're pretty
Well,
organized.
Lynn and
Yeah.
But when you go on port, when you go back on port, coming back off the say,
Oh, I
Oh,
think
at a
what
port of
you
call.
mean.
Juno,
Mhm.
yeah, when you get up.
Yeah,
Oh my
there's
God,
a
I
bit there.
panicked.
There you have to know what ship you're going to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's 3 on the road. We left together. We come back together. Oh my God, can I hang around with you guys? I just got to make sure I'm going back on the right boat. That's my fear. I might as well just stay inside because with a blind
Well,
person.
and the thing about that, Nancy, is you've got your ID card that you have to show when you come back. And I know that
Yeah,
when we were on the last Alaska cruise, there were some people that had got on the wrong boat and they were talking about it. And our ship waited until they came back.
That's what they did. That's what they did.
Yeah.
You're right. They did that.
But
Yeah.
don't they scan the ID card when you board the ship
They
again? So like, do you think
scan
those
it
people
when
that
you
would?
They do
yeah,
now.
and whenever you leave and whenever you come back.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
You
you're
go
on the
through
wrong
customs, you have to go through,
place.
take your jacket off, take everything off. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I was
Go through
panicking.
Well,
Lynn
it was
and I,
Yeah.
it was funny on the Hawaii cruise because when we came back, you'd go through and my dog loves to set off the alarms because the metal on her harness and everything rings and she wags her tail and bounces up and down. And for the first few days, they patted me down and then they went on and got used to. You're good. Way to go. See you tomorrow.
Go away.
Oh.
It's funny. Ba is the first dog that doesn't get totally excited when she hears the alarm go. Like she just kind of like she doesn't really wag and get excited like she does at home. So I was kind of surprised the first time at an airport. I was like, what do you mean you're not jumping up and down,
Oh,
running
my
toward me
dog
as soon as the
loves
alarm
it.
goes off?
Okay, we've got a
I just
couple raised
Does it
hands.
all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about when Lynn and I went on the Cunard ship 3 years ago in July. We left from Vancouver, and somehow, well, it was very crowded that day, and we couldn't find the sign. Like we were getting into the lineup to check in. We got into a lineup. And we got to the counter eventually, and we were standing there, and they had our our passports and stuff, and looking for us. They finally said, like 10 minutes went by, and they said, "You're in the wrong line. You're on the wrong ship."
Oh no.
Oh dear.
Oh no.
I mean, we weren't at the
That's
ship
awful.
yet, but we were in the lineup.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, oh gosh, we're for a Norwegian ship, I think. But so yeah, the signage, whatever happened that day, we hadn't easily found our place.
So in other words, get there early.
Well, we got,
Yeah.
That's
got there pretty early. This time we
5
had,
hours early.
I guess because I was being wheeled. I don't know. We didn't get it. I didn't notice any crowds at all the day we
Oh,
went.
they probably took you through the bypass line, because when Bill and I got
must
out
have.
of our Uber last October, there was this, they were well, yeah, Marilyn and Peg and Diana, they people were lined up downstairs with the cars, and buses are dropping people off, and they were doing the check-in down there, and there was this whole lineup that's snaking all over, and all of a sudden someone says, "Come with me," and we cut the queue and ended up like being like 4 or 5 people back from the check-in counter.
I know, it was amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And the customs people said, "Have a good trip." I said, "Thank you, we will."
Yeah.
Mhm.
I found the Los Angeles port not very friendly at all when I was there last year.
Mm.
There were some people that were okay, but there was this one woman there who was very upset, like one worker who was very upset with her colleague for allowing us to go by like the bypass line.
Oh,
And she was like, "Why are you doing that?" And this other woman's like, stop it, be quiet." Like she was telling her colleague basically to shut up. But because, and I don't know, I found it both going to the ship and coming back. There were some very unfriendly people there in LA. I don't know, Long Beach. That's where we were. And I just don't. I hope I don't get experience that this year, because honestly, it was pretty. It just wasn't very nice.
That's where we boarded Tammy for our very first cruise.
Yeah.
And
oh, me too.
we didn't find that, but I wonder if that was anything to do with the new regulations that are coming in.
I don't know. This is maybe.
I know that one of the things I had at the ready was my CDC form saying that my dog was approved to enter the U.S.
I know. I mean, yeah. Anyway, that's another topic. But
but it
no, I
really
mean like the
changes
whole
how you
U.S. thing.
feel.
But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like you gotta have your forms at the ready and just be really prepared. I think with these forms and stuff.
And what I did,
yeah.
I had 2 envelopes of forms in my backpack. The first was the ones that I thought I would need. The second was what I thought I might need. And what we did is I brailled each of them with the ones that I thought I might need, each form, and there was a stack of 4 forms in that set. And I had 3 or 4 different copies, just in case anybody needed one. And then my secondary envelope was my backup set, and I wrote on each envelope what each envelope contained.
Yeah. No, it's good to be prepared like that.
And that really worked well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like overkill, I know it, but
Like the only place that, like, in my experience too, the only place I had trouble with paperwork was of course the one place where I made mistake on the paperwork, and was in Belize, and so the guy said, "Oh, it'll cost you $50." It was basically like a bribe, and then he corrected the paperwork and said, "Oh, welcome to Belize." But
yeah, there you go. Pay him the $50 and go on your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had issues like that, but it wasn't so much me. We were in Florida, and we were coming back from a cruise, and my uncle was in a wheelchair, and my aunt couldn't see. It was like the old people's, but we were the young people then. It was like, oh my God. And we were supposed to have these wheelchairs, and it was like they couldn't speak English, but they were. And I'd do things like I'd stick my cane over the line because I'd want them to get this wheelchair that they wanted, knowing I was sticking my cane. And they go, "Ma'am, stop." And we ended up finally, first Doug found, I think it was a white cap or some guy, and he saw him with a wheelchair, and he said, because we couldn't go, because we were splitting up. This was the end of the cruise, and we couldn't go with my aunt and my mother and everybody else, because we were going back to Arizona and they were going home. We had different airlines. And so he paid.
Oh, so you were at the airport.
We were at the airport now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I never said that. But yeah, we were at the airport. And so they were supposed, so we paid this guy. He says, well, I'm not really supposed to do this. And Doug gave him $75. And he took my mom, my aunt, and my uncle. And he got them through all the lines where they were supposed to be. And then my aunt gave my figure another $50. He had a good day.
He had a good day.
Yeah,
Good day.
He had a
Wow.
really good day. But they got where they were going, but we will never travel American Airline again. And then they said, oh, we are so sorry. We'll give you a free ticket to somewhere else. And we said, well, how stupid is that?
Yeah. Money talks over there. Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else about cruising? Because
Yeah, that wasn't.
I just want to make sure, is there anything more about cruising before we turn off the recording? Because, you know,
What a wonderful session. Yeah, very
it
interesting.
is. I'm just asking before I turn it off.
I'm good.
No.
Okay.
good.
Is anybody else? Okay.
Thank you for checking out our content. To learn more about the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, please visit www.blindcanadians.ca. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe.